105 Esoteric Traditions of the World. Book 3, Transmission in Exile. Chapter 2, Hasidic Kabbalah, The Joy That Burns in the Ashes. 1. Opening Vignette, The Dancing Rebbe. The snow was deep that year, so deep it swallowed the wooden markers until the graveyard seemed an empty, white field. The wind off the plains was not the kind that stung. It was the kind that took. It pulled warmth from the bones, breath from the chest, memory from the heart. The Rebbe walked barefoot, not from penance, not from madness, but because the snow was the only pure thing left to stand upon. His boots lay by the synagogue door where the candles still guttered for the dead. His wife, his 2 sons, his little daughter. He had buried them with his own hands that morning. He had recited the Kaddish until the words felt too large for his mouth. And then he had gone outside, into the white, into the wind, and begun to sing. The melody was no melody, not one a cantor would recognize. It was a niggin, wordless and rising, like breath that had lost its way home. Sometimes it surged, sometimes it faltered, but it never stopped. With each step in the snow, his voice shook, and with each shake, it became steadier. A young disciple came to him, coat wrapped tight, boots crunching. "Rebbe, why do you sing today of all days?" The old man's eyes shone, not dry, not wet, but lit from somewhere far inside. "So God will not forget us," he said, "and so I will not forget God." The boy said nothing more. The wind carried the niggin beyond the graves, beyond the town, into the emptiness where only God could follow. That night, in houses where grief had shut every window and door, someone heard the tune in a dream and woke humming. The snow kept falling, the song kept burning. 2. Core Teaching, Devakut, Cleaving to the Infinite. In the Hasidic tongue, Devakut means cleaving, not as a knife to a thing, but as a lover's arms to the beloved. It is the state of unbroken intimacy with the infinite. One does not merely think about God in Devakut. One is inside God's gaze, breathing his breath, moving inside his movement. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic path, taught that Devakut was not the privilege of scholars, nor the reward of ascetics, but the birthright of every soul. A man should be with God, he said, as a child is with his mother, holding the hem of her garment, so that no matter what he does not let go. This is no flight from the world. In Devakut, the Hasid does not escape into some sterile heaven. Instead, he plunges into the world as it is: mud, laughter, grief, market noise, winter frost, and recognizes it as a form of divine concealment, Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is the great Kabbalistic mystery that God, in order to create, withdrew his infinite light, making space for worlds to appear. But the light did not vanish. It hid itself in the very fabric of the created world. Everything, from the holy ark to a broken cup on a beggar's table, is woven with sparks of the infinite. To live in Devakut is to see these sparks, to breathe with them, to coax them home. The Maggid of Mezrich taught, "Do not think the market is outside the divine. Do not think your bread is without his breath. The moment you remember him in the marketplace, the market becomes a temple." Joy in sorrow. The paradox is that the door to Devakut is not merely joy, but joy born in sorrow. Anyone can sing when the harvest is full, but the Hasid sings when the granary is empty, when the snow is deep, when the heart feels hollow. Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, who wrestled with darkness all his life, declared, "It is a great mitzvah to be in joy always." But he did not mean a shallow cheerfulness. He meant that even in the pit, one must find the thread of God's presence. "There is no place where he is not," he said. "Even in the most profane place, he hides. And if you find him there, you have revealed him more than in the synagogue." This joy is not denial. It is defiance. A joy that says to despair, "You cannot have me. I belong to the one who breathes in the ashes." Practice of presence. In the Hasidic way, devakut is woven into every act. Eating bread is not merely nutrition, it is the drawing out of divine light from grain and salt. Conversing with a stranger is not small talk. It is the recognition that the other's soul is a flame from the same fire. Even grief becomes a garment for light. The Baal Shem Tov taught that every mundane act can be a chariot for God if done with awareness. To a student who feared losing devakut while working, he replied, "It is possible to chop wood for the fire and still cleave to the Creator if your heart is with Him." Song, story, dance, and the telling of parables are the Hasid's ways of keeping the heart awake. A niggun, a wordless melody, becomes a ladder. A tale of a hidden tzaddik becomes a mirror. Devakut as world healing. Hasidic masters saw devakut not only as personal union, but as a cosmic task, tikkun olam, the healing of the world. Each act of remembrance draws a spark from exile back into the heart of God. When you bless the bread, when you sing through tears, you help repair the shattered vessels of creation. The Maggid said, "When a man cleaves to God, the worlds themselves are drawn back to their root." The courage to remember. The danger is forgetting that the beggar is God in disguise, forgetting that the sorrow is a veil for joy, forgetting that your own breath is breathed by the infinite. In exile, whether geographic, spiritual, or emotional, the Hasid fights against forgetfulness with joy. Joy becomes the rope by which he pulls himself, and the world, back toward the source. One night, a young Hasid asked the Baal Shem Tov how to remain in devakut when grief was overwhelming. The master smiled gently and said, "Even when your heart is in pieces, let each piece say, 'There is no place without him.' Then the pieces will know each other again." In this way, devakut is not fragile. It is the strongest thing in the world, because it is God remembering Himself through you. 3. Spiritual condition, the soul in exile. Exile in Hasidic Kabbalah is never just geography. It is the ache of the soul that knows it was once whole. In Jewish mystical memory, exile began the moment Adam and Eve stepped east of Eden. The gates closed, the cherubim drew their swords, and humanity took its first breath as a wanderer. The Shekinah, the indwelling feminine presence of God, went with them, not abandoning, but also not at rest. She too wandered, clothed in the dust of human history. Every historical scattering of the Jewish people, the Babylonian captivity, the Roman dispersal, the expulsions from Spain, England, and Poland, was understood not merely as political misfortune, but as a mirror of the soul's own dislocation from its source. The suffering of the people was the suffering of the divine presence in exile. By the 18th century, the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe were poor, weary, and spiritually starved. Religious life had grown dry, rabbinic legalism dominated, and the ecstatic currents of the Kabbalists of Saft had become the preserve of the few. It was into this winter of spirit that Hasidism erupted, not as a new philosophy, but as a reignition of ancient fire for ordinary hearts. The Baal Shem Tov, Yisrael ben Eliezer, taught that exile is not overcome by escape, but by turning the exile itself into a meeting place. God is not hiding in some distant heaven. He is in the bread you break, the snow you sweep from your doorway, the melody that carries you through grief. Rebbe Nachman of Breslov would say, "Every place you are banished to is a place to find God. Every sorrow is a gate, and the key is joy." In Hasidic Kabbalah, the mitzvot, commandments, are not obligations to appease a distant ruler. They are acts of repair, tikkun, threads of gold sewn into a torn cosmic garment. Each mitzvah is a kiss, one teacher said. Each act of love is a ladder. This is why Hasidic stories are not just moral tales but vehicles of reunion. A good story, told with light in the eyes, is itself an act of lifting the Shekinah from the dust. A song, even in a cracked voice, can awaken the sparks hidden in the night. Exile, in this vision, is not a sentence but a field of work. We are all shlichim, emissaries, sent to gather the sparks scattered in the breaking of worlds. The Maggid of Mezrich put it plainly. The repair begins in your heart. When your own soul remembers, the heavens remember with you. Hasidism does not promise an end to exile in this lifetime. Instead, it gives a way to walk it without despair, to transform every wandering step into a return. 4. Inner technology. Joy, letters, and story as light work. Hasidism is not a philosophy you recite. It is a way of ignition. Its masters built tools of fire lighting, tools for turning the heart toward God even in the coldest night of exile. These tools are not traditions in the museum sense. They are technologies of remembrance, designed to awaken the soul's memory of the infinite. A. Ecstatic prayer, hitbodedut, and davening. Rebbe Nachman of Breslov urged his students to go alone into the forest or the fields, to speak aloud to God as one would to a trusted friend, without script, without piety masks. This practice, called hitbodedut, is not begging for favors. It is the soul standing bare before the beloved. In the synagogue, the body joins the prayer. Shuckling, the gentle forward and back sway, is not mere habit. It stirs the heart's embers, bringing the words into rhythm with the breath and the blood. In moments of clarity, one may leap into song or even dance alone in the kitchen. In Hasidic teaching, this too is prayer. The gates of tears are never closed, the sages say, but neither are the gates of laughter. Weeping and joy are both modes of cleaving. B. Hebrew. Letter. Mysticism, the fire in the alphabet. In Kabbalistic Hasidism, Hebrew letters are not marks on parchment. They are living lights, each a channel from the infinite into the world. The divine name is not a metaphor. It is a ladder of being, a vibrational code that sustains existence. Contemplating the letters, whether the 4 of the Tetragrammaton or the 42 of the Ana Bakoch, becomes a form of union. Each curve and crown is a spark. To meditate upon them is to draw down that spark into the heart. Psalms and the Zohar are not texts in the modern sense. They are fields of sound. To recite them is to tune the instrument of the soul to the harmony of heaven. C. Sacred storytelling, ma'aseh as oral initiation. In Hasidic life, stories are not decoration. They are vessels of light. The tale of the hidden tzaddik disguised as a beggar or the fool whose joy turned back an army is not just folklore, it is a mirror. Parables slip past the intellect's guard. They lodge in the heart and work there silently until the day the hearer remembers, not learns but remembers, that the truth was always theirs. The Maggid of Mezrich taught that to tell a story of a saint is to touch the saint's soul. In this way, storytelling becomes an oral initiation, a transfer of the flame without books or ceremony. Integration, technologies of remembrance. None of these, prayer, letter contemplation, storytelling, are about religion. They are about remembering who you are in God. Each is a way to lift the veil, to reveal that the spark has never gone out. In times of persecution, when Torah scrolls were burned and teachers exiled, these inner technologies kept the light alive in kitchens, fields, forests, and whispered conversations. They remain today not as relics, but as living instruments, and for the one who takes them up in sincerity, they still work. 5. Symbol. The crown of the hidden tzaddik. In Hasidic vision, the tzaddik, the righteous one, is not simply a scholar of Torah or a master of law. He is a transparent vessel, a hollow reed through which divine mercy flows into the world. His authority is not derived from title, position, or public recognition, but from an unshakable alignment with the infinite. The tzaddik's crown is not fashioned of metal or jewels, but of light, a subtle radiance born of humility, joy, and unselfconscious service. This crown is not worn for others to see, yet those who meet a true tzaddik feel its warmth as unmistakably as sunlight on the skin. Hasidic legend tells of the Lamed Vavnikim, the 36 hidden righteous ones whose merit upholds the entire world. Their identities are veiled, even from themselves. Some are beggars who sleep in doorways, shepherds wandering the hills, or fools dismissed by the learned. Yet in their silent devotion, they keep the world from collapsing under its own weight. One story tells of a ragged man, mocked as a madman, who sat by the roadside blessing every traveler. When he died, the rain fell for 3 days, as if the heavens themselves were weeping. Only then did the village rabbi reveal, "You thought him a fool. He was the pillar holding our world in place." The tzaddik's crown is seen only in glimpses, when joy bursts forth in song, when humility bows lower than the proud can stoop, when the presence of one heart ignites another. In Hasidic eyes, this crown is light dancing above a bowed head, the invisible diadem of one who cleaves so fully to God that he becomes a living ladder between earth and heaven. Such a crown can never be taken, for it is not an adornment but a state of being. It is the flowering of a life lived in quiet service, where the highest honor is to remain hidden, and the greatest victory is to be forgotten by the world, yet remembered by God. 6. Key danger: when the fire is forgotten. The great peril of Hasidism in the modern world is not persecution, it is neglect. A flame can survive storms, but it dies in still, airless rooms where no one bothers to feed it. In the cities of today, Judaism is often pressed into secular molds, cultural identity, political posture, family tradition, without the trembling fire of the presence. The ecstatic core of Hasidism, the raw, trembling, laughing, weeping encounter with God, has been either politely hidden away or written off as emotionalism, something to be tolerated as a quaint relic of the past. In academic halls, Hasidic thought is dissected like a butterfly pinned to a board. The warmth of the living wings is gone. All that remains is the diagram. Students are told about the devakut, clinging to God, of the Baal Shem Tov as if it were a literary style, not a living hunger. Outside the tradition, the fire is misappropriated. Christian Kabbalah, born from fascination with Jewish mysticism, often detaches Kabbalah from Hebrew itself, repurposing it into European magical systems. The Sephirot become abstract symbols to manipulate, not divine emanations to stand in awe before. This is not theft so much as translation without oxygen. The sound is similar, but the breath that gave it life is missing. The danger is not simply distortion. It is that the body remembers the gestures, but forgets the pulse. People dance the Hasidic steps at weddings without knowing that in the shtetls of Eastern Europe, those steps were a prayer strong enough to split the veil. They chant psalms for ceremony without realizing the psalmist's voice was breaking open in yearning. When the fire is forgotten, joy becomes performance, not offering. The ecstatic sway of prayer becomes mere habit. And the greatest loss is this: the embodied knowledge that God is here, now in the very breath rising from your chest. Hasidism is not an intellectual mysticism. It is not a system of doctrines to be believed or rejected. It is the lived risk of union with the infinite, at the cost of one's comfort, one's control, even one's sense of separateness. It is the willingness to cry in public, to sing until your voice cracks, to dance when no music is playing because you have felt the music inside. Without that fire, the words remain, the customs remain, but the heart is gone. And a heartless mysticism, however ornate, is already dead. The call of Hasidism is simple. Remember the fire, not as a concept, but as breath and movement, as tears and laughter, as the trembling knowledge that you are already in the presence you seek. 7. Exile and transmission. Stories that survive the fire. Hasidic joy was not born in comfort, and it did not die in catastrophe. It crossed borders in whispered songs, carried in the breath of those who refused to forget. Pogroms shattered shtetls. The Holocaust ground entire dynasties into ash. In the camps, some sang themselves to death, nigunim rising into the smoke, each note a ladder. Those who lived often rebuilt without fanfare, setting tables in New York, Jerusalem, Montreal, where Yiddish still lingered in the air like the smell of challah from another century. The lineages that survived did so without relying on official seminaries or printed manuals. Transmission was person to person, an old rebbe leaning close to a young boy, sharing a melody in a voice cracked from fasting, a trembling hand lifting a cup on Shabbat, and blessing not only the wine but the act of blessing itself. Two sets of eyes locking for a moment longer than necessary, a silent recognition of the same fire. Carriers of the fire, nigunim, wordless melodies that do not need translation. They are not songs about God, they are the sound of the soul remembering God. The Shabbat table. Between bites of bread and sips of wine, stories of miracle workers, fools turned saints, and shepherds who saw angels in the fields. Told not for entertainment, but as acts of preservation. The small acts. One child noticing how his grandfather's fingers trembled when lighting candles, and years later finding his own hands shake the same way. One elder put it bluntly, "We are not a religion of books, we are a people of breath. If the scroll burns, the song survives." It was never the paper alone that held the light. The paper could be torn, burned, banned, but a tune, a story, a moment of eye contact, they can cross oceans and pass through fire untouched. And so, even in exile, the current continues. Hidden in kitchens, back rooms, and side streets, the transmission still happens, quietly, stubbornly, unbroken. 8. Transmission practice. Sing in the dark. Hasidism was never meant to be confined to study halls or guarded behind locked cabinets of commentary. Its fire lives in the simplest of acts, a song hummed in the dark, a wordless melody that refuses to die even when the scrolls have burned. This is Hitbodedut, raw, unfiltered communion with the infinite. Not a performance, not a sermon, no robes, no stage, no audience. Just you, your breath, your voice, and the one who hears. The practice, create a small sanctuary. Sit alone in a dim space. If you wish, light a single candle, not for ritual's sake, but to hold your focus. Let the flame be a quiet witness. Hum without planning. Begin with a low hum, without thinking of a tune. Let the sound rise from somewhere deep, your chest, your belly, your longing. Do not direct it. Let it shape itself, just as water finds its own course. Let emotion have its voice. If grief rises, let it waver in the melody. If joy sparks, let it dance. Do not push anything away. In Hasidic knowing, every feeling is a gate. Even the tears carry you to the beloved. Speak as to a friend. When words come, speak them aloud, not with liturgical polish, but with the honesty you'd give a friend you trust with your life. Ask, accuse, confess, thank. No script. Seal with gratitude. End with one sentence of thanks. It does not matter how small. Thank you for this breath. Thank you for letting me speak. Gratitude is the thread that ties the heart's cry to heaven's ear. Why this matters? In exile, Jews carried no temple, no altar, only the songs and stories that could fit inside a heartbeat. Hitbodedut is the portable temple. In it, every breath is incense, every tone is a candle, every moment of honesty is a return from exile. It does not matter if you know Hebrew or any sacred language. What matters is that you show up, unguarded, unpolished, real. This is the language heaven understands best. The gates of song are never locked. Through this practice, you join a chain that stretches from the shepherds of the Carpathians to the hidden tzaddikim in modern cities. You add your own ember to the fire that even in the darkest nights of history has refused to go out. Sing in the dark, and you will find the light was listening all along. 9. Closing image. The flame in the clay cup. The apartment smells faintly of tea and old paper. Outside, Brooklyn traffic mutters. Inside, the elder sits hunched in a chair that sags in the middle, wearing socks with holes. His beard is yellowed at the edges from years of tea steam and candle smoke. He does not rush his words. His voice is soft, but when he begins to tell a story, the light in the room changes. It is not brighter, but warmer. like the air itself remembers something. He speaks of villages without names now, where the snow squeaked under boots and laughter steamed into the winter night. He speaks of songs that have no words because words can be burned, but a melody, once inside you, cannot be taken away. They burned our books, yes, he says, looking at the candle on the table, but they never reached the breath. That breath still sings. His hands, thin as kindling, gesture as if shaping an invisible cup. We are clay, he says. We break, we chip, but we can still hold the flame. Even cracked, the cup can shine. The radiator hisses. A bus groans past. In the quiet after, you realize you are holding your breath, not in tension, but so the sound of his words can land without ripple. You see him as he is, not a relic, not a saint, but a vessel, a clay cup lined with ash, holding a small stubborn fire that has refused for centuries to go out. Outside, the city keeps moving. Inside, the flame glows on.